Hi everyone, my name is Jenny and welcome back to my creative space. In today's video, I am going to be doing the mid-year freakout tag, which was originally created by Chami and Earl Grey, who I will tag down below. I am reminding myself that this isn't a review video. We are just going to be answering the questions and not giving as in-depth reviews. This is a reminder to myself. Before we get into the questions, thus far this year, I have read 43 books. I think I've been kind of back and forth with reading because of my overall mood and things that I've been going through personally, but I'm really excited to sit down and talk about the books that have made the biggest impact thus far, and hopefully this can revive my mood and my enjoyment for reading, discussing books that I really enjoyed. So the first question that we are going to be answering today is the best book so far in 2025. And I kind of milled over this one. I had 3, but I'm trying to narrow this answer down to 1. And so the book that kind of won out for me was Bat Eater and Other Names for Cora Zhang by Kylie Lee Baker. This one, I think, just has to take the top of the list this year so far because of the fact that it hits so many different notes that I enjoy in reading horror. This one, we follow our main character, Cora Zhang, who is a crime scene cleanup person. And in the very beginning, we are seeing the start of the COVID pandemic. And then we witness this very gruesome murder of her older sister. And we follow the story as she is navigating grief, not only the grief of losing her sister, but also the grief of losing our normal day-to-day life because of the pandemic. Obviously, that really impacts how the character moves about her life. And I think this story this year just really emotionally impacted me, getting to examine the pandemic from a different lens and also having to witness so much of the horrific things that a lot of Asian people had to encounter because of the racism that came about in this time. I think Kylie Lee Baker just wrote that so beautifully and it made me feel very seen. It was quite cathartic, and the scenes of horror in this one have just like infiltrated my mind. I think about it quite often because I was like, wow, the writing in here is so well done. The horror is so well realized. And I did enjoy also that there are parts in this book that are quite funny and comedic despite there being this dark tone that is quite oppressive in the entire narrative. But I think Kylie Lee Baker had a message that wanted to be spoken in this, and I think that overarching message was done very well, and the writing to back that messaging was done so beautifully. So this had to be my number 1 pick this year. The second question is the best sequel this year, and that has to go to A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is the second book in the follow-up of, I believe, The Tainted Cup, which was book 1. We follow our main character, Din, who is this apprentice to one of the most well-renowned detectives in the entire empire. And I enjoyed this because of the fact that we get to know so much more about our main characters, Anna and Din. And you can just tell how much fun Robert Jackson Bennett was having writing this, building out the characters, giving us more lore behind who Anna is as a person, and also letting us know more things about the corruption within the empire, not only within individual prefectures within this empire, but how that reflects the entire corruption of the empire as a whole. And we get to discuss power in such an interesting way, but that kind of kicks into gear Din's own questions about the corruption that happens within the entire empire to allow the abuse of power to happen. I really enjoyed the way the author discussed that in this one, and just how dynamic this book is. I am starting to realize how much I like murder mysteries in a fantasy setting, and this one just had all the little bits and pieces, the political intrigue, the murder mystery, the very shocking reveals. It was just such an exciting book to read, and I am so much looking forward to the next book in this series. The next question is going to be a release you have yet to read but want to, and a more recent release that I've kind of been pushing off is The Emperor of Gladness by Ocean Vuong. This one is by the author of On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, which is probably one of my top favorite books of like all time. I really enjoy Ocean's prose and writing, and this one is another novel from Ocean. And I've just kind of been pushing it off because I know it's going to have a lot of emotional impact. It'll probably make me cry. And I don't think I'm in the emotional area right now where I can consume this book, but this is definitely one that I want to get to and hopefully read by the end of this year. The next question is going to be a little bit negative, so please do not hate me for my answer, but it is the most disappointing book this year, and that unfortunately has to go to Wild and Wrangled by Lila Sage. This one I anticipated a lot because I was really interested in seeing Cammie's love story, but I just didn't feel invested when I first started reading the book. It is a second chance romance, and that is a trope in romance that I don't read that often, and so I was really worried on how that would go about in that one. There are quite a few flashbacks. I think I made it to like the 30% mark, but the flashbacks for me weren't really pulling me in, and I started to lose interest and investment in it. And because I DNF'd it, I asked one of my friends who had read the book what the ending of that story is, and I'm kind of glad that I DNF'd it, and I just wasn't as invested in Cammie's story as I thought I would be. I feel like all the other Rebel Blue Ranch romances, I was able to lock in so much quicker, and in this one, it took me so long to get invested and interested in her story, despite it being such an interesting layout and setup. I think that the dynamic between the love interest I just couldn't really get behind, and it wasn't as, fun and goofy as I thought it was going to be. The next question is the biggest surprise, and that has to go to The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. This one is my biggest surprise because I actually did not know about this book at all. One of my friends had read it. I think he gave it a 4 or 5 star, quite a high rating. I had never heard of this author or this book at all. And when I picked it up and read it, it has all of those elements that I was talking about with A Drop of Corruption that I love in a fantasy story. And this one is a murder mystery. There's a bit of a competition in there. There is multi-perspective in this one. And there is a lot of political intrigue. There are twists and turns and character reveals in this that were just so interesting, and you can tell that a lot of these characters are very well built out. There is a lot of intrigue behind each of their own personal driving forces within this story, and it was such an interesting and new and fresh story in regards to the fantasy genre that I've read, and I just had such a good time. I can't wait for the sequel of this story because the ending, there was this big massive event that I really wonder what the impact of that event will do for the entire world as a whole. I just don't know when that sequel is coming out. I don't think this author really has a social media presence, so the people that I have to be following is Orbit in order to know when the sequel is coming, but this was my biggest surprise because it just wasn't on my radar at all, and it turned out to be a very fantastic, well-layered fantasy story for me. The next question is new favorite author, and thinking about the books that I've read this year, I think the person that is the most stand out for me this year has to be Kylie Lee Baker, just because of the atmosphere and the writing in her horror was something that I just wasn't expecting, and I really enjoyed the writing in that and just how well immersed I felt in the horror story. I know that Kylie Lee Baker is going to be coming out with a new Japanese Gothic horror, I believe next year, but she has quite the backlist with YA fantasy books, so I'm really interested in reading those. But she has to take the cake for favorite author just because that writing was just so impactful and it sticks in my memory so much. The next question is new favorite character, and I think that has to go to Nemo from the Raven Scholar. I just enjoyed how dynamic and kind of funny her character is. She is this very high ranked scholar within her community, but I don't think people really take her that seriously because she's not like that dynamic, boisterous kind of leader in her community. She's more so of a nose in a book kind of person, and she is always looking to learn more about her world. And I don't think people really respect her because she's always like, here are the facts and I know everything about everything. And people just think she's kind of silly, doesn't take her seriously, but she is tasked to do investigation of this murder mystery for the king. And she is just put in positions that she would have never put herself into if it weren't her task to do so. And I think getting to see her be out of her comfort zone, but still bring in the strengths of her person into these situations she would never be in on her own choice, I think was such a fun ride. And she is kind of silly, she is goofy. Despite her having this quite serious nature, she is such a fun character to be around and read the perspective of, and getting to see her go through some really wild things that she would have never experienced otherwise. I think it was such a fun character to follow in this fantasy book. The next question is a book that made you cry, and I'm not really a crier when it comes to reading books, but I think the one that I would have to go towards is Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man. And again, while I did not cry, this book made me quite emotional, and I just enjoy Jessie Q Sutanto's writing within the series specifically because Vera Wong has such a strong character, and the concept of these books, she kind of builds a more found family dynamic in there. She finds a lot of people who are kind of scattered around the community who otherwise would not really know each other and brings them together and melds them, because she kind of finds people who are kind of lonesome, and she, as a lonely person, understands and sees that, and she's able to bring them together and support them and give them the encouragement and the love that they're kind of lacking. And I think that just makes me really emotional, seeing somebody who has such a different experience and walk of life finding these strangers and being able to give them love and support is such a beautiful and like tear-jerking kind of thing to read. And even though the story isn't necessarily heavy, it's more of like a cozy murder mystery, Vera Wong's character just makes you want to cry, especially when she gives like this very wise advice to younger people. I, as like somebody who kind of struggles kind of finding my direction in life sometimes, getting to read these paragraphs of her advice is just so heartwarming to me, and it makes me very emotional because I'm like, this woman reminds me of my grandmother and like the other woman in my life. And just to read these on page, it's a very heartwarming, tear-jerking kind of moment. So that's the book that made me cry. The next question is a book that made you happy, and that has to go to Rewind It Back by Liz Tomford. This is the last book in the Windy City series, which is an interconnected sports romance series. And this one just made me happy getting to read from one of the characters that we meet, Rio, from book 1 in Mile High, and we get to finally see his romance. And there were so many cute, like, moments that made me giggle, but I also really enjoyed getting to see the rest of the found family in this friend group and having these moments of them finally together with all these people that they love and like just building out their families together and seeing how much they like positively impact each other. It was such a happy book despite it being quite angsty. And this book just brought a lot of levity to me in the month that I read it. I've been struggling quite a lot with just finding joy in reading, and this one just brought back quite a bit of a spark for me when reading this one. The next question I have on my list is favorite book to film adaptation. I could cheat and say Apothecary Diaries, but I'm pretty sure I said that same answer last year. We are in season 2, and so the manga light novel is being adapted, and I just think that is a beautiful animation. So if you are into anime, please do watch that. But one that is supposed to be coming out this year, I believe, is Witch Hat Atelier. And while it is not my favorite because I've watched anything, I've only watched the trailer, but the art style looks so amazing and beautiful, and I can't wait for that to come out. So I'm kind of cheating on this answer by saying Witch Hat Atelier, but I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I can just tell from trailer alone that it's going to be a new favorite anime adaptation for me. The next question is most beautiful book you received or purchased, and looking at the cover of the books that I've read thus far this year, I have to give that to Immaculate Conception by Ling Ling Huang. This book is just such a dynamic cover. The textures of this, and this one also is the aardvark version of this book. So when you open it up, the color tone kind of matches the cover style, and it's like this beautiful buttery matte hardcover, which stunning work on aardvark's part. But I really think that this is the most beautiful book, mostly because of how well I think that the cover evokes the feelings and the topics and discussions within this book. This one is more of like a sci-fi horror, and there is this piece of technology that gets introduced in this book, and I think like these swirls and textures really has that concept brought to life. Jacket design is by Jaya Miseli, and the jacket image Statistical Beauty is by Sergio Albiac. But yeah, stunning job from the design team, and I think that it conceptualizes the entire novel very well on the cover here. And the next question is your most anticipated release. I have a few answers for this one, and the first one I can think of is Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. That one is her most romantic story that she's written thus far, and I believe it's 2 students going to hell to go find their professor for certain reasons. And then another one is the sequel to The Will of the Many by James Islington. I believe that is called Strength of the Few. Very much looking forward to that. Heavenly Bodies, the sequel to Heavenly Bodies, is coming out, I believe, fall of this year. I can't remember the title of that one, but I know that there's like sea motifs on the cover. I will be showing you the cover of the book here. And then the next one that I can think of is the 4th book in the This Woven Kingdom series by Tahira Mafi. I believe that title is called Every Spiral of Fate. Very interested in seeing how that goes, and hopefully getting to see a lot more romantic moments in that book. Very excited to see where the story takes us, and hopefully we're not really left on a cliffhanger in regards to the sequels that I have on this list. Then the last question for this tag is going to be a book you need to read before the end of this year. I have quite a few books that I have yet to read on my 25 in 25, but given the way that I've been reading recently, I don't think I'm going to be completing every book. So I wanted to pick one priority read, and that one has to go to House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This is a chunky one and quite an intimidating read. I have repicked it back up and slowly been trying to get my way through this. I will say it is a little difficult to read for me because of the font type. I think like the certain footnotes have this interesting kind of typewriter-esque font that is kind of hard for my eyes to process. So I've just got back into reading this and telling myself that I just need to slowly read it. And by the time December rolls around, I'll probably have it done. But yeah, kind of struggling a little bit with the typeface of this book, but I am really interested in seeing the conclusion of this very strange, haunting house. And I hope that I'm not scared out of my wits, but to be honest, within like the first 2 chapters, it just feels very creepy and eerie. But I'm really looking forward to reading this. And this is just a book that is definitely my priority that I have to read before the end of the year because it's one that I'm looking forward to and I just keep pushing back. But I'm going to really get serious about this one and really get to reading. But yeah, that is it for my mid-year freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. Down below in the comments, I would like to know what is your best book that you've read thus far this year, and also a book that you are looking forward to reading before the end of 2025. But thank you again for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!